Randi Green here, and welcome to another podcast on the awakening process. I have made some notes. Normally, when I do classes, I do write text material, which I elaborate on. So it's not unusual for me to make notes. But here it's a different type. It's not written out in all details, because when we talk about the awakening process, even though I already defined a lot of this is what's happening. Awakening is where we go through different stages, where we work through our 3 lower emotional fields, and we are learning to activate our heart field, which many calls compassion, the understanding of self, others, and reality, where we fit in, how to find our rightful place energetically, emotionally, mentally, how to be authentic, to go through different types of self-healing processes, self-investigative processes, psychological processes. So awakening is this whole full realm of understanding the 3 lower fields. It is this deep inbuilt process of what is needed to clear out the emotional field and transform it into the vibrational field. And I talk a lot about that in the 4 transition courses: the psyche as energy, the psyche as processes, the psyche, keeping the psychic energetic balance, and the advanced work with the emotional field. And that's technically the awakening process if we were to describe it more scientifically, whereas we could say others are just going along with it, which I did in the beginning too. It was just this one process took after another, and I began on 2 levels. I began both on the psychopeutic level, because I was doing inner work due to my super sensitivity as a child, left different perceptions of reality that was so dissimilar that I felt completely out of sync with the rest of the world. And my big question was, why don't I fit in? What is literally what's wrong with me? And I could see I was different. I could see other people responded differently to things. I could see I saw things I knew for certain that other people were not seeing these things. I learned not to talk about it. I don't even think I ever tried. I just knew within that if I share this, then it will not be good for me. Let me just put it that way. That was back in the 70s. So of course, we didn't have all of these medications and diagnoses and what have you, all of these things that they have today with kids that do have the activation potentials in them, and by that have a different brain or neural network that works differently, also due to the different types of humanoid genetics that many of these kids have. So in that one, I understood, okay, I'm dissimilar. And I had these inbuilt drivers that pushed me through certain things. And then I was, of course, in conflict with that. And I felt this, what's wrong with me? Why don't I fit in? And there's a lot of other psychological processes that I'm not sharing here because of my super sensitivity, because of the family dynamics I'm in, because of a stressed mother, a stressed father, and not enough time, which many of you that live in the States and other places in the world have also grown up with, and the unpleasantness that gives. So there are different stages of what we could say childhood trauma that, as I always kind of said it, well, if I'd been a normal child, let's put it that way, if I had a normal emotional field, a clone field, then my response mechanism to some of the things that happened in my family would probably not have felt that traumatizing as they did, because I had an activated field. So I felt it. I felt it emotionally. I felt it energetically. I felt the neglect. I felt their trouble. I felt their issues. I felt a whole multidimensional aspect of whatever happened. And because I didn't understand it, because I didn't have anyone to tell me, oh, this is completely normal for a kid like you. And that's why I, at some point, will go into work with, on the Randi Green one, I would like to work with relationship parenting and communities where those of us who have this structure, and many will get kids that are super sensitive, me including my own child, and how to navigate in that, how to explain that, how to build that in as part of parenting, which with my little one, I couldn't do until she was a grown up. And then she's only taking boxes of it that she can cope with. The rest, she says, I'm just forgetting that because I don't want to go there, which is completely fair. It's okay, but it's there. She knows it. It's known that she's born out of my loins. She's made out of my material. So she's sensitive like I am, but she's not activating. She's choosing not to for reasons and purposes. So that builds in a choice. At least she knows enough so she can make a choice. Those of us who are part of the older generation, we didn't really have a choice. It was like we were born into this program of awakening. And that means that we've been driven from within. I will definitely say with my little one, there has been pushes where she has been activated due to circumstances in the fields around her. But because she has said, I don't want to do this, then I have cleansed it out and shut it down. So in that way, as a parent, you have that choice because she's made out of my flesh, so to speak. So in that manner, when we talk energetically speaking, then there could be a collaboration there where the one that is the parent, so to speak, can assist, amplify or de-amplify, let's call it that, or make it dormant again, like we have seen with spiritual teachers that can activate their students and then they can shut it down again. So that's part of the ability that those of us who have trained in healing and activation processes as part of the healing, the clientele that we have had, to know how to open and to shut down. And if people are not ready, well, it shouldn't be forced on. But as I said, the older generations, we didn't really have a choice. We were just, this has to happen, and they were pushed in that direction. Similar like many that are now in what we call the newer stages of the awakening process with their humanoid genetics, they don't have a choice either, because that's run by cubes and technology and the changes in the reality field. So we could say the matter of in the awakening process where we talk about free will, there is any really free will. There is, this is what you get, this is what you can work with, and then what do you do with it, that's up to you. And there is much more than can be said with this, but I don't feel like going into all of these personal processes here, because this is a YouTube video where we look at it from a general level, and I know it's nice to know there are personal experiences behind these generalizations. It's not just me been looking out on the internet and then concocting something. All of these are from my personal experiences with clients, my own experiences, and what I have worked with both people that were dear to me and are dear to me, as well as clients that have come and gone, students that have come and gone, and my own processes that have gone through many different stages. And I am aware that the different composition in our fields, the different levels of humanoid genetics, which age group, whatever project we're under, I talk about some of that in the reconfiguration sciences, determines what kind of activation and awakening program that we are under. So it's not one fit for all. We could say the awakening has similarities because it goes into psychological processes. It goes into clearing processes, inner work processes, rediscovery of self, rediscovery of the world as it truly is, rediscovery of others as they truly are, the maturing process, the growing up process into figuring out, okay, what's this all about? Who are we really as human beings? And what's the world made of? And not what we have been introduced to. This is how the world is, as we learn in primary school and in high school and what have you. In Denmark, we have just from 1 to 10th grade on the same school, so we don't have the same environment, but throughout our schooling system. And if we have chosen to educate further, all the things we have read and got on the internet and what have you, and then suddenly we are this time and age that we are in, we've been bombarded with so much information on the internet, which I dug into as well, just to discover, okay, certain things are definitely activating certain types of thought forms in my mind, and other stuff are activating certain levels of feelings in my heart, and other things makes me feel good, some things makes me feel worse, some things makes me see things that are highly unpleasant, because it is tying into highly unpleasant levels of our reality field. And that's the discernment process where we suddenly learn, well, all information is not necessarily out there for good, and not all should be looked into more than just we know it's there, we acknowledge it's there, and then we turn the other cheek. Because the law participation, when we talk about energy, whatever you look at will look back at you, and whatever is you create a connection to, you will get sucked in unless you know how to disengage and disconnect through the different dissolving techniques and transcension techniques, which I also talk about in the transition sciences. So all of these processes, they lead us through different stages. And we can say, what is it aside from the remembering? And we remember what we know, what we should know through the different teaching systems that are out there. And then the next level of issue comes in, and that is that most of these teaching systems has been distorted. They have been twisted and turned, so they are only functional on 30%. But 30% for those of us who have the knowledge already, that are in this steep learning curve of awakening and are doing the inner work and doing the clearing work and are doing the hours of meditation it takes to have the silencing, the insights, the accessing to the deeper knowledge, learning to be mindful in our everyday. And mindful here means you observe the now as it truly is. And then you respond in a manner that creates less distortion. And I know that's not what is said about mindful practices, but this is me shortening down to that very energetic viewpoint where mindfulness becomes the ability to observe self, other, and reality as energetic nodal point, energetic interaction, where you in each moment must choose a solution, a type of process that is transformative, that either leads to transcension upwards or downwards, as in transcending upwards and above, or dissolving and transmuting it, as I talk about again in the transition science classes, where you then create either, if the event is something that clears out the past timelines, then you use it for the process of letting go of that timeline. If it's something that is related to the now, then it's a transformative process so that you gain more insight in how energy works, how you respond to energy, how you make choices that leads to a more prosperous type of process, meaning and leading to that situation where you say, this is definitely leading to a progression. This is evolving me. And that's not just about saying, oh, this unfortunate event, I learned something from it and hence everything is good. Sometimes that is the case. Other times you learn that situation was completely uncalled for. There's nothing good to derive from it. It was just the counter forces and they're just playing out their shenanigans. So this part of the discernment as well. And mindfulness in that spectrum of energy, similarly as mindfulness when we're working on the psychological level, is the mindfulness practice of our emotions, our emotional responses, the ending of suffering, as it's so nicely put, where you go in and observe that everything goes out in the world as it does. The world is as it well is. You have no control of that, but you have control of how you respond. You have control of your emotions. You have control of your thought processes. So the mindfulness practice in the awakening and the activation, so to speak, of the higher levels of your emotional field is to learn when to feel compassion, when to transform it, when to let go of it, and when to see things as they truly are. And the process of that is when you know how things truly operate, then you also know what to do with it. So it's this ability to see things as they truly are, to get the information from the situation so that you know wisely and with the inner knowledge that comes from the heart and the mind, that at that point should get connected, where you have activated the heart field to the degree that it can activate the mind field, and then mind and heart begin to work together and create what we call true wisdom. Not just what you have learned, not just when you're running on your emotional patterns, not just because you're running on your trauma, self-defense mechanisms, or whatever it is. True wisdom comes when you really understand the situation as it is. You see the energetic wiring that's connected to it. You see the root of it. You see what the purpose is of it. You discern where the different angles it comes from, and you understand exactly what to do with it, or to clear it, or to transform it, or to transmute it, or to transcend it. You know exactly what that is, and that is the highest level of the practice of mindfulness in everyday life, where everything is something you observe on the multidimensional level and you know exactly what to do with it. That's mindfulness when we really get into the full scope of what that actually means. And then there, of course, are what we call the insight type of. So mindfulness it's not just about in meditation. That becomes the everyday practice where we are so in tune with reality that we have calmed our inner thought processes so that we become the observers. We have learned to administer our emotional reactions, so we respond in a manner that creates less distortion. And that literally leads to this wise type of living. Not that we always do it, but we know what it is. And it's practice, practice, practice. And there's always something that can throw us off. And there's always something new we can learn. And these are the processes where we can say, that was good that showed up, because it showed me where I needed to work more. And sometimes when the counterforces come in and play shenanigans, that also shows us some levels that we need to work with. It teaches us how our brain is built up. It teaches how our emotional field is built up. It teaches us all the things that we are as a human being. And that's technically what the awakening process is, to summarize it in shortening. And it's been there all along. All ancient cultures talk about know thyself. All philosophies have talked about how do we activate the higher levels of what it means to be human. Not necessarily within chakra system teachings or the Hindu teachings, but many different angles, whether it's through philosophy or Pythagoras who used mathematics or whatever it is. So that's part of some of these angles where we work with the different understandings of the teaching systems that were supposed to support us. And we can say some of them were oriented towards the mental field and some of them were oriented towards the emotional field. And in the awakening process, we learn which teaching systems belong to the mental field, which teaching systems belong to the emotional field, which teaching system belongs to the biofield. How am I to operate with these teaching systems in each and one of the fields? What are the levels that I need to work with in each and one of the fields? And once you begin to go into that, that's where the activation process begins, because that's where you begin to pull in the higher knowledge. And the higher knowledge goes from the holographic energetic energy system that is beyond or above your three lower fields. And that's the activation process where we work with our higher order energy system, we work with our consciousness potentials, and we work with the dynamics these have with the reality field we are part of. Because we have done the awakening process, we are now in the full knowledge of how to operate with energy, what to do, what not to do, what is wise to do, what we could do, but wise not to do, and all of these different differentiations of how to work with energy in a manner that assists us in both pushing ourselves into learning processes, but at the same time also taking good care of ourselves in that process. Self-nurture, self-protection, not necessarily just putting up white energy and white spheres and what have you. I never really believed in that, because for me, the true self-protection comes in through when we work with the different experiences and we learn to transform the energies correctly. And that's a long, long journey, especially when we go into the artificial fourth and fifth, if you choose to do so. Then a lot of these defense mechanisms, they don't work at all, because then it's like driving in traffic. You can say, well, I go in the car and I put a white bubble around myself and then everything will be good and fine. No, not necessarily. You're talking about cars, you're talking about technology, and talking about other drivers that are not susceptible to your protection mechanism. It might give you a feeling of calm, and that actually makes you a better driver because you're not stressed, but it doesn't change anything. The surroundings do whatever the surroundings want to do, and that's in the artificial fourth and fifth. There you are up against fifth. That's all about cubes and old Atlanteans and old timelines where technology was misused in our reality field, unfortunately, leading to the complete blow up of the fifth planet and all of these unfortunate things that I, for now, because I've seen glimpses of it, I know, okay, now I know what it is. It's all about cubes. It's all about Atlantis. It's all about the fifth planet. It's all about what we didn't do right. It's all about the fall of the humanoid civilizations. And I just kind of, I'm stepping back from that one. I made it through the fourth, but I know what the fifth is about, but I don't see any purpose of going further down that route. I know enough to now make different choices. I know enough to now look at what is the fifth cycle that is more accommodating for my energy system. And since I was not part of the fall of Atlantis, I was not part of this system when the fifth cycle came to its completion here, unfortunate and in great disasters, I was in the Andromedan system, so I don't have timelines there, so don't need to look it up, even though people say, oh, I would love to hear this, and you can investigate and research and come up with your opinion. And I'm just saying, no, thank you, I'm not taking the bait. because I don't want to get entangled in something I don't need to get entangled into. That's again, I know what it is. I know enough to avoid it. And that's a very clever discerning mechanism. That's part of the fifth, because the fifth is all about discernment and higher level knowledge and how to use the sciences correctly. And one of them is to exactly not go where you shouldn't go. Not because, I need to know, and the fear of missing out or whatever it is. This is where we as humans need to learn what to know, what to not know, what to investigate, what not to investigate. Yes, it's not about blinding ourselves and say, I don't want to know about it and do 3 monkeys. Blah, 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 blah. It's about saying, I know enough now, and that I don't want to know more about, because I don't want to give it energy. I don't want to amplify it. I don't want to look into it. I don't want to connect to me. I don't want it to imprint in my field. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I put my foot down and say, I don't want to have anything to do with that, and I don't want to support it, and no person in the world can convince me otherwise, because I know it has an energetic effect on my energy system. And I've been through enough when I went through the fourth, and I've got out of that one, and I am in the fifth, but I'm not turning into more shenanigans than I have to. That's the learning process of the fourth. It takes us out of the infantile, immature, everything is good as long as I'm just kind and caring, then the whole world will respond in kind and caring energy. And that applies inside this reality field, absolutely. When we're out and around other people on this planet, as things are now, it is always the right approach to be kind. It is always the right approach to have the full understanding, what people call compassion, where we really understand what we're dealing with. We understand what's ticking in other people. We understand what's going on in other people. And we respond to them in a manner that is the most optimal for both involved, whatever that means. Sometimes it means a hand up saying stop. Other times it is kindness. Other times it is helping. Other times it is just to walk away from the situations. Other times it's not to get into the situation at all. For instance, if we are walking and we see a person, that person has a field that is highly unpleasant for me. So we shift side and go on the other side of the street, which we learned between 2019 and 2022, that we learned what it means to not just go in our own blindfolded path, but actually observe someone is coming near to me. That person has a field that can affect me to some degree. I know this is not what most of you got out of the pandemic, but that was the main learning lesson, that things can jump, things can shed off, things can affect us within a meter from a person. And that's the takeaway of that. Not that we are to become all frightful beings that doesn't dare anything, but this is when you live with the double awareness, you switch this on. That's the awakening people, to understand energy and to make wise choices and to be kind and be mindful and learn how to respond in every situation. That's the peak of the awakening process that then spills into the activation, because now you're ready to understand that you have an impact on your environment, and the environment has an impact of you. You have an impact on other people, and other people have an impact on you. And that means we must be responsible beings. And we must understand that it's not just about, when we talk about awakening into the future, now I'm looking at my notes here, it's not just about when saying, it's just spirituality and new age and we go with these ideas, and awakening means that we awaken to our guides. And you have heard me talk about this many, many times. Once you get into the fourth dimension, if you go there, I don't say you have to, but if you are pushed in there, you will see that most of these guides are grays in disguise. Guides are grays in disguise. You can almost hear there. And holographic overlay from insects and insectoids beings and fourth dimensional energetic beings, energetic parasites. Energetic parasites in our fields can create a holographic overlay so that you can communicate with them and you think it's a guide, but it's actually just one of your energetic parasites that might be an old technologically engineered genetic infusion that got in when the colonizing races came here as a control mechanism, linking up to the astral barrier and onward and so forth. I talk about all of these things in the advanced clearing work, so I don't feel the need to repeat it here. And then there is more the modern spirituality that's gone into what we call con-spirituality, where the awakening process is oriented towards what's going on in society. That is part of the awakening process. But if the awakening process leads to segregation, and it leads to disputes, and it leads to arguing, and it leads to these kind of me against you dynamics, then it's not really helpful, is it? That does not really create teamwork. That creates groups that are up against groups. And we've seen that throughout the human history. That's once humanity reaches a certain level of a high culture, of both within technology, but also within what we call psychodynamics that we've seen on many high cultures throughout human history. Well, the best way to shut that high culture down is to generate what we could call situations where groups are up against another group, whether it is political, or it is within psychology, as within different groups of humans, or it's within the societal structures, as in different groups within society get certain allowances and others do not, and certain prerogatives and others do not, and in fairness and hierarchies and what have you. All of these dynamics is a way to take down high cultures. And if they even got through that, well, then they kick in the hedonism, which we're seeing in our society as well, and all of these things that comes in that leads to the degradation and the contamination and the distortion of the achieved higher levels of the human mind, putting it into levels of perversion, putting into levels of power, greed, and other similar things, which then leads to the connection to some of the pockets of our reality that houses entities that are prone to be sucked into people that are eagerly expressing some of these psychodynamics. So this is the and that was shut down in the Middle Ages. That's part of the astral barrier, actually. But since that's gone, we are now back in the good old environment as it used to be within the human realm, where our emotional responses and our emotional configuration and our mental configuration determines what kind of timelines, what kind of reality fields, what kind of pockets of the reality field that we align with. So that's where the awakening process suddenly comes in and really gives good meaning of why mindfulness practices, kindness, and the true understanding of reality, self and others, why that becomes so important, so we can make the wise choices that do not connect us to these different pockets, vibrational pockets of reality that will shut down our heart field, different types of radiation code stream pockets of the mental field that's connected to the fifth cycle, that will give us different forms of thought processes that are not particularly inclusive. And then the biofield via how we eat and how we operate and how we administer our physical processes, this will become more apparent in the 2-8 pillar, what leads to different forms of ailments, what leads to different forms of distortions, and how do we maintain the physical form as we navigate through the next 9 years, where it will be, for those of us who have learned to work with energy, might be a bit of a bumpy ride due to the things that are coming up, where we really learn to the discernment comes in, and what to look at and what not to look at, what to do and what not to do, not out of fear, but out of wise decision of what to engage with and what not to engage with, because we have learned the signature of these different things. So we know this is good, this is not good. Then why go into something that we know is not good? We have tried it before. We know, as we said in Danish, burned child, scared or afraid of the fire, right? We shy the fire. When once we have learned, ouch, that hurts. No need to repeat it. You can do it twice, then you learn it. If you do it twice, then yeah, you definitely need to check your head if you are under some kind of energetic influences that forces you to repeat these patterns of unwiseful and unskillful actions. So that's also coming in. I know I'm using a little bit of a language here that many of you are familiar with from some of the Theravada teachings, because that's where I have my origin, as you know. That's where I began my awakening process. And including also within the chakra system and within the esoteric teaching system, because the esoteric teaching system is a conglomerate of all of the ancient teachings, and it's a mess. And it was good for me in my awakening process, but what I got from that was, that's not for me. There must be something else. So sometimes we look into things to know this is not me, and then we need to figure out what is me. And that's where we begin our own personal activation journey. So we have what we could call the military projects that are part of that. So we have the spirituality New Age angle, which I grew out of 20 years ago, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It's part of a process. We go through different teaching systems, which we then grow out of, and then as we mature, we then begin to look at other things, and eventually there will be no more teaching systems we can rest our head upon. As it said, the prophet has no place to rest his head. Eventually, there's only the inner knowledge that you can have, and including when we talk about the world out there, the world is as it is. The world doesn't change just because we change, but we change our perception of it, and we learn what to look into, what not to look into, what is needed and what is not needed, and we understand at the end of the day, it's up to the collective to change the world and not one person. We can definitely make a lot of changes as change makers, as one person. And if many people are doing that, then we become the momentum of change. So this is where later on, and we could say that's exactly why the communities have not been allowed in a manner that actually would change the world. Only the communities with the New Age and spirituality that enforces the dynamics of the insectoids or the brotherhoods or the avians and allow them to still have a stronghold on our reality. And that's, some of you will see there's a surge now in some of the spiritual and communities, as well as the traditional spiritual 4-cycle teaching systems being revived, either as part of the Metrotronic councils, the falling angelics, or as part of some of what's left of the brotherhoods. They're trying to revive groups so they get a power position in the transition earth and getting a foot or stronghold inside the transition earth. So these are some of the things, and people will buy into that. They will join these groups and they will learn their lessons there. Some of them will be sucked in and not knowing what they're doing there, and not knowing that they are, as so many others within these community groups, are being gathered together to create a momentum of a specific type of idea and thought form that are factional. It's connected to different factions. And we understand that dynamic so that when we meet up, we are fully aware why we create a community, what the purpose is of our community, what the energies are of this community, what we want to achieve with this community. It's not just about meeting up because I need people. We meet up because we got work to do. That's a huge difference. The spiritual communities are, in my opinion, psychologically driven for comfort zones, for places to be appeased, for refuge, for a bold, what are called a barrier, a kind of a fence against a very, very difficult world that's tough. And I get it, it is tough. As a psychotherapist and working with people, including my own life, including upbringing of my little one, I remember the stages where she began to say, well, the world is so hard, Mom. And say, yes, it is. But you can do this and this and this and this. And you can learn to do this and this and this and this. It doesn't make the world less hard, but it gives you strategies of how to deal with the hardness of the world. So this we can teach our children, and this we can teach ourselves, because our parents didn't teach us that. That was just about get a partner, get a house, get a car, get a job, whatever, get a partner, get a job, get a house, get a whatever, get children. That's all you need to do, right? So that was the program there. Now the program is different. The program is, how do you learn to be in a world of change? How do you learn to deal with these challenges of this world? And I go into some of these dynamics in the Changemaker material, where I have produced 6 courses of how to work with becoming a change maker, what it means to be a chaos pilot, what it means to be a path cutter, how to deal with the changes of the 4th dimensional world that is now coming in, whether it's from the parallel universal matrix. They are more or less gone. We still have the insectoids, we still have what remains of the brotherhoods, we still have some of the remaining regress groups that are still here because they got nowhere to go. They got their hybrid children. They will definitely become a huge player in the future. And then we have what we could say the modified humans, the military projects under the Atlantean timelines. That's part of the 5th cycle. That will also become part of the future for those of us who are in this full-blown understanding of multidimensionality. And That means that humanity will be divided into groups that absolutely know nothing. The groups that are slowly, because the world is changing around them, are then being forced into an activation or an awakening process to some degree, at least into the new norms, this is the new normality, this is how it is, this is what it means to be human in the world as it is now, with the different types of environmental changes, the different types of financial changes, the different environmental changes, if I haven't already said that. But the whole reality field is changing, and hence the groups of humans that will come in the future, they will be clearly very, very different, and they will work very, very different. So we are now at that stage in the change of our world where the other dimensions will become visible, at least not in the outer environment. That will change, but it will be called for instance, when we look in if you look at spaceweather.com, I look at there from time to time and I see, oh, now they come up with this new invention of this, and now they explain these purple clouds or whatever in the sky as being Steve, as they call it, kind of an ionization of the magnetic field, or they come up with these nocturnal clouds or whatever it is. All of these things that are the residual effects of the crisscrossing, the residual effects of the sun that is changing its vibrational pattern, the throwing off of the shields, the reconfiguration, all of these kind of things. They'll come up with all sorts of scientific explanations. And those of us who are in the understanding of energy, we of course see it differently. And we accept, yeah, they can call it whatever they want. They have always done that. As if science is about coming up with new concepts, and then as long as we have the concepts, then we have the quote-unquote understanding of what it is. No, you just have the concepts. You have to define it via these concepts and thought forms and frames of references, so we know what we are talking about, but you haven't figured out what it is, and you don't know the root of it. You don't know where it comes from. You have speculations and theories, but you don't know what it is. But that's a coping mechanism. And that's where with the whole academy, which I'm now changing into, those of us who are the change makers and the pioneers of the future, our process must lead to new sciences. For me, that's when you go into the fifth, that's new sciences. So we have the ones that are still struggling with the emotional field, the mental field, and understand the world as it is and learning to deal with energy. And then we have the ones that are navigating through the fourth dimension because they have to, because they're connected to timelines there. They still need to clear out these timelines. I explained that in the Advanced Clearing Work course material. And then you have the ones that are bridging into the fifth, either via the military project configuration or via the original solar system fifth planet configuration. And some of the advanced human civilizations that are part of the hybrid kits, they will be the ones that will fill out the artificial fourth. And that's why it was important for me to work my way through the artificial fourth. So I at least had an understanding, okay, this is what this is about. This is what they are, that's part of they will be in the fourth dimension. I will not be in the fourth dimension, but I know what the fourth dimension is. Similarly, as I'm not part of this world anymore, I'm not out there going to a job 9 to 5. I'm not earning my money. I'm not on a paycheck like most people are. I'm working through other dynamics and onward and so forth. So that's part of the when we talk about what was the goal of the awakening. In a way, it's where we are now, the transition earth. It's where we understand that people that cannot change, will not change, do not have it in them, are not interested in changing, are stuck in their ways. They will be pushed energetically and consciously and perceptional wise to what's called past earth or old earth. They will live in a world where everything is business as usual, and they will not notice the environmental changes. They might, but they will say thank you to the scientific explanations. They will just live with, well, it's just a high level of pollution, or this is just environmental changes, or that's just to whatever reasons that comes up, what the great councils within our planetary community are coming up with, telling them the stories that they are okay with, or they will get sucked into different kind of worshiping communities, or they will go into different type of spiritual practices that will give them the sitting down in kindness and complete their life in some of these what do you call it, ostracized or restricted, or what do you call it, gone away community settings. I'm here talking about people who used to be monks or what have you, or live in little spiritual communities where they adhere to older teaching systems and keep themselves within these ideas. They will be part of old earth. And for those of us who are in transition Earth, we make a decision. We can look way in between. We can look at the future and we can look at the past, because we've cleaned enough of our past timelines. So we are not sucked into them. We're not entangled to the same degree. We have learned to observe our psychodynamics. We have learned to observe the energetic dynamics. We have learned to observe this energy comes from that type of timeline. This energy comes from that type of timeline. And then we make a choice. Which timeline do we want to be on? Do we want to be on this one that connects to old Earth, or do we want to be on this one that connects to future Earth? Or do we just want to stay here on transition Earth for a couple of lifetimes and complete our work here before we move on into the future when we feel we're ready to do that? And that leads to some ideas of, well, if that's the case, then it all comes down to the timeline work. Then it all comes down to the understanding of how to work with the different energies on the timelines. And then we understand later on, these are called code streams. And that's the fifth cycle of sciences. Some of my students have talked about, it's difficult. What are code streams? Well, you can... All of these codes and code sequences and code streams and code levels are part of the fifth cycle, where everything turns into little light filaments that holds different types of information. And the best way to view this is similarly as if you talk about the human DNA. The human DNA cannot be seen with the visible eye, but it can be seen through technology. It can also be seen through spectrometers, where they color code the different frequencies that the different levels of the enzymes and the minerals and the amino acids and the ATCG codes have, and how they are put together. Machines can read that, so they can see it as energetic signatures. They have an idea of how, if they unravel the helix, how it might look. They have made illustrations of this is the best interpretation of it. Similarly, as we have artistic interpretations of certain spectrometral imagery have from distant planets that we can't see with the visible eye, but the machines have detected it and gives what we call a frequency image of it, with different levels of frequency signatures that we interpret as rock or as water or as gas or what have you. So the same with the human DNA. And when we go into the fifth cycle, the reality itself is run by these advanced technologies that is called cubes, and they code the filaments, the energetic holographic units, in a specific way with a specific type of information. And that's how you actually hold a reality field in its configuration. Otherwise, it would change all the time. So you have the cubes that keeps it stuck in a specific configuration. Then you have the holographic energetic architecture, which is our energy system that we can choose to align with different forms of code sequences, here called timelines, that are 5 timelines in the 5th dimensional level. They are combined to 5 different types of classes of lineages or genetics, and they produce different forms of information systems that have a different or a specific effect on our holographic energetic architecture. And that's why we choose which timelines or code streams we want to be part of. The code streams are something that we pull in energy from, so that we align a holographic energetic architecture with a specific type of vibrational pattern and a specific type of radiation pattern. That codes our biofield, emotional field, and mental field to hold a specific type of vibration, from where we experience our own physicality in a specific way, from where we experience our emotional perception of reality in a specific way, the way the vibrations affect our heart field, our emotional field, our vibrational field, what kind of patterns it activates, what kind of responses it activates. And this is where the practice of kindness and skillful manner comes in, and mindfulness. And then we have the radiation that comes in and affects our thought processes, and that's where the observer and the point of understanding what's going on in my mental field are enormously important. What is being downloaded into our brain, what is being downloaded into our mental fields, the 5 rings of our mental fields. And there we also understand, as females, we've got 9 rings of emotional fields, and men have 7 rings, and onward and so forth. And we get to the understanding that it is okay only to activate 7 of these rings, and just learn to administer our lower order fields and higher order fields as part of the 1-7 pillar, where we are learning to administer a template in the manner that it should. And I talk about that in the template science courses. So you see, I've here made the ideas and the understandings of the transition sciences of through the awakening process from what we call a scientific angle, more than the practical, just not the practical, they're practical exemplifications as well. But so you have the frame of references to the work that you're actually doing, to kind of say, oh yeah, that's that stage, that's that process, that's what I need to do there. And then there is the clearing work that gets you through the artificial fourth and disconnect you from these timelines, so you're no longer sucked into their schemes and old earth. And then you go into the template sciences, where you learn the requirements of what is needed on transition earth. And that is that you know how to administer your fields. Simple as that. Because if you give your power away to others to do it for you, then you are under their control, so to speak. So when we talk about the fifth cycle of sciences, I talked about that earlier on, where I said, for those of you who are in this process of learning who you are and what you are, there are stages of this process where it is conducive for you to be on your own, where you learn who and what you are on your own. Then there are other levels that are conducive, where you team up with either as part of community or people that you care about, where you learn who are you in regards to others. There are certain healing processes that can only be fulfilled when you're with others. There are certain healing processes that can only be fulfilled when you're on your own. Then there are the healing process in regards to the world as it is. And the healing process in the reality field itself is to transcend the current reality field and lift up to the double awareness of what is really going on holographically, energetically. So we have the everyday awareness switched on in our how we deal with our lives in our little home and in our little community, how we deal with ourselves according to others, and then we have the full-blown multidimensionality that goes on top of all of that and give us the extra dimensional understanding of what's really going on. And via that, we can make the right choices to keep our fields maintained to the degree that they are supposed to. And that was what was taught in the 1-7 pillar. And I talk about the different types of pillars, both in the transition sciences, as well as in the template sciences, as well as part of some of the energy work clearing processes. So I've made all of that course material. These 17 classes teach you all the sciences behind what we are going through right now. I know there are other people out there teaching other stuff, and as always, you go with where you feel you belong. You go with where you feel there is the highest level of resonance that makes sense to you in what we're dealing with. So we are, even though I've made a lot of notes here, there are for me, the goal of the awakening, aside from energy understanding and how to make discernment and how to operate in an energetic reality, as I talked about, the outcome, the everyday practicality of it is to become change makers. It is to become those who understand how to live the everyday life with the double awareness switched on, who understand to live the everyday life with the different groups of fourth dimensionals and fifth dimensionals and what their plans are and what they want to do with this reality. It is to learn to live with the higher awareness switched on, the double awareness switched on, the multidimensionality switched on, so that if we still choose to be part of a workplace as an employee, then we choose workplaces that are supportive of what we call an awakening process, supportive of certain of the dynamics, the new reality field configurations that are being implemented as we speak, whatever that is. And that's part of some of the change making material where I talk about this. And it's also about finding our peers. It's about finding the people that we can say, these are our people. It's not because we need these people, it's because we understand, we exist to transform this reality field. We have awakened because we got job to do. We have not awakened because it makes us feel good. We have not awakened because we want to be kind and caring. That's part of the process. Once we have that, we understand that that kindness and that caring comes in, so that when we see things that are there as they truly are, we know how to respond in a manner that creates less distortion, that creates the best opportunity, the highest progression potentials for all. And we understand, okay, once we get that, then the next level of the dynamics in the fifth cycle is, what do we then do with it? What do we need to clear out the timelines? Which ones should we let fall into old earth, from where they will fall into the abyss? Which one should we activate? Which one should we not? How do we work with technology in a wise manner? How do we work with the cubes that are behind all the technology we have now implemented, including AI and chat GPT and what have you? They are linked up to cubes. They are part of the early military projects. Some of them are other cubes from the fifth that are coming in from the Andromedan system and onward and so forth. So the discernment level goes from the heart field understanding of vibrational energies, what amplifies our field to lift up to a higher degree of elevation dynamics and processes, and then lift into the fifth cycle, where we'll learn to understand the code streams and the information sequences of all there is, and how to work with that in a highly scientific manner, so that we create a reality for all that first and foremost heals the wounds of the last time we entered into the fifth cycle, the fall of Atlantis and what have you. For those who are part of that, that's their karma. They need to do that. The rest of us, we look into the transcension dynamics and say, we need to look at the future and some of the prospected fifth cycle timelines that never came in play, but are lying there dormant, awaiting our alignment, so we can activate this and begin to create that fifth cycle that rightfully should have been as part of our solar system. So, and with that understanding, I will end this podcast. Thank you.